Hi, my name is Annette Pedersen. Welcome to my presentation, Connecting the Word Zoo with Animal Welfare, Exploring PR Benefits of Animal Training. Let's go back to 2013. A documentary movie was released, Blackfish. I think you've all heard of it, and some of you have probably seen it. The purpose was to question killer whales in captivity by telling the story about the male killer whale, Telecom. The effects this movie had on SeaWorld was enormous. They suffered a huge financial loss. They had to change their show to be less entertaining and become more educational. They agreed not to breed killer whales anymore and thereby at some point end the era of housing these whales. They also teamed up and collaborated with the US Humane Society, who is an animal welfare organization. There have been other movies about whales in human care, for example The Cove. So why did this movie have such a huge effect? Well, first of all, because SeaWorld failed to respond quickly and go into a dialogue. They didn't respond to the movie before it was way too late. The distribution of this movie was massive. In the medias, Netflix, you could get it on DVD and Blu-ray, and the timing was perfect. Because of, for example, the accident a few years earlier where a trainer was killed by this exact animal. So this movie was also made very emotional. And of course it was highly promoted by animal rights organizations. And that certainly helped turning the world against SeaWorld. But how? Well, first of all, they know how to impact people's emotions by using anthropomorphism, and they also really know how to use the social medias and how to twist the truth. Just look at these pictures. Especially the book Captive on PETA's website caught my eye. The cover picture is from Copenhagen Zoo, showing our old polar bear enclosure from 1951, clearly photoshopped and with a not so flattering and incorrect text below. And what they unfortunately failed to show was the big new enclosure just next to it. In 2016, I was lucky to attend a conference meeting in Busch Gardens, Florida, with the CEO of SeaWorld, Joel Manby, telling the story about Blackfish and the impact it has had on them. Leaving that meeting, I was for the first time worried. Who's next? Elephants? Great apes? Carnivores? We have already begun changing our language. We don't say captivity, we say in human care or management. We don't say exhibit, we say enclosure or habitat. But is it enough to change the words? Then in March 2020, just before the world shut down, I got invited as chair of the Animal Training Working Group to the EEP mid-year meeting in Amsterdam. It was a 2-day meeting, and the first day went with updates and discussions, and the second day was a workshop about how do we make the word zoo positive again. During that meeting, I heard comments like, zoo is not a good word today, words like bioparks are used instead. In the introduction to the EEP Committee Action Plan 2020 to 2025, I found the outcome of this workshop. And here I picked 4 sections from the text that I will read to you now. At the same time, we have to deal with the impact of a changing society, a more aggressive approach of animal rights activists, and an increased impact of social media and the press on our work. We also see increasing challenges within the membership, with a meanwhile former EAZA Zoo owned by a consortium of animal rights organizations, with municipalities that own a zoo deciding to restructure the zoo in a different direction. Rescue center, focus on local fauna only. And an owner even challenging the rights for a zoo to exist at all. Therefore, the EEP committee started with a brainstorm about the positive state we want to be in as zoo community by 2030 and aim to reach consensus about the future ambitions of the committee. In parallel, we should show, communicate more effectively what we're doing so we get recognized for that and speak more to people's hearts. It is therefore also important that we speak with one voice as zoo community and at the same time are transparent about what we're doing. I'm thinking, okay, this is serious. What can we do? As chair of the Animal Training Working Group, I was of course looking at animal training. What do we do? Well, we use science of applied behavior analysis and its practical application for daily management, medical behaviors, problem behaviors, research, enrichment, education, physical and mental stimulation, and a lot of other things. And how does this affect people when they see it? I just had the pleasure of having these 4 people from the University of Southern Denmark visiting our zoo to learn about animal training. And after the visit, one of them wrote this message to me. I have been doubtful about zoos concerning the ethics of having wild animals in cages. But after my visit to Copenhagen Zoo, where I got the chance to see the training behind the scenes, my perception changed a bit. I was surprised and impressed by the training, where one of the main cores is that animals should never be forced to do anything, but rather willing to do the exercises. I also got a wider understanding of the purpose of zoos, which quite often is forgotten in the daily debate. Zoos are not just about displaying animals, but spreading knowledge, being a part of research, and contributing to the understanding and saving of species. Thereby, I think highlighting these facts even more could improve the image of zoos. And this is far from the first time I hear this. So, how would we feel if we didn't work in a zoo? Well, it can be hard to look at yourself from the outside, so let's try to look at another world. The medical industry and laboratory animals. A few years back, I was asked by a friend to come and have a look at Novo Nordisk, a Danish medical company that is front runners in insulin development and other therapy areas. They wanted me to see if I had any advice on how they could improve their animal welfare. Of course, I was biased in my opinion about these places, but after my first meeting, I was quite embarrassed. I had no idea how many resources and how much effort they invested into increasing the welfare of these animals. I showed them how we have trained our guinea pigs to enter a crate to participate in educational sessions. And already after the first meeting, they started crate training their rabbits instead of catching and lifting them out of their cages, which are big cages where the rabbits are housed 10 to 12 animals together. And what we learned, at the NC3R Center in Liverpool, they've been studying mouse behavior and found that mice taken out of their home cage by being picked up by the tail are much more cautious and don't explore normally and are not interacting properly with the test environment. Animals picked up by tunnel are much bolder and explore normally, so they can measure the natural behavior rather than the response of being handled. Now, learning that, we started using tunnel or cupping when handling our mice at the zoo. And there was more. Martin Carlsen, the guy you see in the picture receiving the 3R award for his work on animal training and welfare, is the team leader for the caretakers at Novo Nordisk in his section. And he told me that they actually spend 25% of their time training their animals for medical procedures. I mean, even animals that are here at the facility for a very short time are trained. The researchers have seen the benefit of training on their results, and they have started ordering animals that are trained for certain procedures, like you will see in these 2 videos. The first one, you will see a mini pig that's been trained to follow a target to go up on a ramp onto a table for examination. And they use yogurt as reinforcer. And the next one, you're going to see a mini pig doing a freeze behavior on a target while having an injection. Did my perception change? Oh yes, it did. Did yours? So how can animal training help? Well, let our work speak for itself and let it speak to people's hearts. How do we do that? We can show the daily management in the opening hours close to the guests so they can see it. They enjoy watching animals interacting and cooperating with their caretaker on their own free will, like here where a tamarin is asked to step onto a scale for its weekly weight checks. People find it much more interesting than watching an animal just being petted by a person. You can also announce these events as presentations and let a speaker explain what's happening. Like in this case, a horse working with her caretaker, running an agility course for exercising and physical stimulations of body and joints, and the mental stimulation of working out the obstacles, and show how behaviors like lying down can be used for physical examinations. After the presentation, the guests get a chance to meet the animal in person, close up with physical contacts.
Vi har fået lavet lidt spring og lidt slalom. Og få godt op i tempo. At det, den har gjort, det er det helt rigtigt. Der kommer et klik, og så kommer godbiden lige efter. Nu fik Maria magi ned at lægge. En af grundene til, at vi også træner vores heste, det er, at vi kan sundhedstjekke dem. Ellers vil jeg sige tusind tak, fordi I lige kommer og kiggede med, mens vi træner magi, og ønsker en dejlig dag herinde.
Believe me, it works. And take advantage of the occurring opportunities. Like if you have a transport coming up and need to train an animal to enter a crate. Let the guests become a part of it. Let them see, let them ask questions. And maybe be prepared for them by having an extra person around. And open your back areas. If you only train in the back area, like in this case where we train blood draws on our tigers, then invite people in. Look at their faces. They can ask questions and you can get a chance to show and explain what you're doing while the animal is lying calmly working with you.
Hurt himself of stress of being real habit.
Think guest view the next time you build a new house or enclosure. Have a place where you can do perhaps just a short training sessions to get the animal and the guests up for close encounters. And maybe consider if you can make small adjustments on already existing enclosures to give your guests access or better view to your training sessions. But how do we reach the people that are not coming to the zoos? And that's probably the biggest group of anti-zoo persons. Let's learn from the anti-zoo organizations. How do they reach out to people? They use the social media. Whether we like them or not, they have a huge effect on our society today. We can spread the information on our work, our animal welfare and training, and it will also reach people who are not pro-zoo people. I often see posts on Facebook from animal rights organizations, even though I never click on them. And probably because I'm following groups about animal training. I guess it must work the other way around too. Try to search for animal welfare and training groups on Facebook and see how many results come up. I gave up counting, and this is where you can post your work. And Instagram, we have a keeper, or should I say caretaker, here at Copenhagen Zoo. He has a profile on Instagram called the Zookeeper Guy. And here he posts short, nice stories from Copenhagen Zoo. Like this one that shows a rhino trained for a mouth open behavior. As you see, for now, it has 30,000 views. The profile, the zookeeper guy, has 70,000 followers. And YouTube, this tiger training video from Copenhagen Zoo was uploaded 6 years ago. Today it has 36 million views. Isn't that something? And yes, the comments are not always positive, and that's even the best thing, because these comments opens up the opportunity to answer, debate, and explain the questions or concerns people may have about zoos in a nice way with nice and qualified people. Training has a huge emotional impact because we see the difference. We don't have to read long evidence-based scientific articles to be convinced that the use of animal training benefits animal welfare. Everyone can see it and be affected by it in a very few minutes. And they don't even have to do anything actively, just watch. So let's create more zoo ambassadors. Let's prepare ourselves by offering training courses at the EAZA Academy. Implement a training section in the best practice guidelines, or maybe host an EAZA animal training forum. If you have more ideas, bring it on so we can have more happy zoo ambassadors like her. So finally, thank you Copenhagen Zoo, and a special thank you to Martin Carlsen and Novo Nordisk for letting me use their videos. And of course, thank you EAZA Conference and everyone listening. I will be happy to take your questions.